Hey guys, welcome back to the Between Takes podcast. Today is a very special episode for Hart and I. We're going to be discussing our own stories and our own journeys. And we come from two completely different places, but we ended up here together. We both have very different journeys, different struggles and different successes and different ways of growing up in life. And we're very excited to explore those with you.
Yeah, in this episode, we get into some of those trials and tribulations that Cameron and I have both gone through from very different sides of the world, basically. And there's a lot to learn from this episode as someone who is already in the industry or wants to be in it. So we hope you enjoy it. Like and subscribe on the Himalaya app or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you.
Welcome to the Between Takes podcast. I'm Cameron Fuller.
I'm Hart Denton.
And this is our episode 2.
Yeah, it's like an episode 1. On our first episode, we had Madeline Petch, and she had the idea that we should do an episode where we kind of talk about our backgrounds and our history and how we got to where we are, since that's the whole basis of this podcast. And so we thought it'd be good to have unofficial episode 1, an actual episode 2, where Cameron and I just get into, our background and how we got here and where we grew up and our friendship and our relationships and what we would do different and say to our younger selves. So I'm excited to do this with you.
Yeah. You have an amazing story. I think the whole point of this podcast was I come from a completely different walk of life than you come from, but we ended up in this circle together, and we ended up becoming extremely good friends. And it shows it doesn't matter what your journey is. If you just, keep fighting for what you want and you work really hard, you end up in the place that you want to be.
Yeah. And you surround yourself with people who support and believe in you. That's something that Cameron and I both have found to be a huge, part of getting to where you want to be is having organic, real, genuine, supportive friends. And they can be tough to find in a place like this, like Los Angeles. They're tough to find anywhere, but especially out here when it's so cutthroat. And I've been very fortunate to have someone like Cameron.
Don't make me tear up.
No, truly. And I think it's something that people overlook, how important that aspect is of succeeding in whatever sense.
Yeah. Well, I think it obviously goes both ways. Like, I've been here for a long time, so I've sort of understand there's the appeal of LA and Hollywood, and then there's like the bullshit aspect that comes with it. And I feel like if you're here long enough, you can see through it, but you can also get caught up in it, and that can be a very bad thing.
Yep.
So, but I think your story is, I don't even know the words for your story because it's so incredible. Like, and I would, we've been friends for 5 or 6 years now. But I think the best part about your story is you never told anyone what you were going through. You never made it a thing. Like, you didn't ask for anything from anybody. Like, you're the exact same person you are now with success that you were back then. Right. So, and just knowing you through that friendship, I had no idea really what you were going through. Like, I knew what you would tell me when we'd have our deep talks, but there's so much more. And it just shows like just how hard of a worker you are and how motivated you are and driven. And I think like those sort of qualities actually ended up bringing us together. And that's sort of why we're here today on this podcast.
Yeah, there was over the course of our friendship, there were, I think, times like little by little where you would pick up on things that were happening that you never knew about. And it wasn't because we weren't close. There was no one that knew about them. My own parents didn't know about things that, were going on or that I was going through. And I remember being over at your house one time and your dad asking me a bunch of questions and him being so like, what? Like, that's insane. And even there were moments then too, and this was many years into our friendship, that you were still also like, what, like, right along with it, which, yeah, there's a lot there that is, um, that was kept to myself just out of, it was, it's just how I am. It's how I've handled most things in my life, is I internalize a lot of it,
Yeah.
and I stack it against myself, and I want to win. I want to beat my own self. I want to make it out of a situation, without having to ask for any sort of help. I had seen a lot of people, do go about life that way, and they would get help sometimes, but there was just something to that that felt so off to me, and I didn't like it. Um,
Yeah. I think one
and
of the things I've always loved about you is you have always been Hart.
yeah,
There has never been multiple versions of Hart. Like, you're not one of those people that'll go out and be this person and then you'll see other people and you'll be this version of that person to like make those people happy. You've always just been you.
yeah,
And like, that's so rare, man.
yeah.
It's so rare just to be yourself, you know?
Yeah. But I see that with you as well. That's because I see you in multiple different circles and different groups of friends, and I see the same thing with you. So and I think that's why we resonate with each other so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it hasn't always been that way. There's a trial and error process with this entire thing,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I feel like as you get older and you're in LA and in our business, like your circle starts to become smaller and smaller as you
Yeah.
get
And
more knowledge.
yeah, and you're able to, your bullshit detector gets
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
And I think because you see a lot of it, and you start seeing patterns of people that aren't best for you, and it's easier to weed those people out,
Totally.
um, which is good. But let's start with you. How did you grew up in Los Angeles?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with my life story. I was born in Vegas, which people are always like, "What? You were born in Vegas? That's so weird. Were you born in a casino?" And I was like, "No, born in a hospital." Um, born in Vegas. My dad at the time, he was hosting a show out in Vegas. So that's what he was doing to make ends meet at the time. He grew up in LA. He had me when he was young, when he was 27. Moved, we were in Vegas at that time. And, I didn't realize how tough things were at that point in our lives for my family. Like, he didn't want to be in Vegas, right? It wasn't the kind of life he wanted to be living, but he's a great dad. He never showed that. So he had always wanted to be a movie producer, and he was hosting the show. Wasn't what he wanted to do, and eventually his friends convinced him to move back to LA when I was 3.5. So that brought me back to LA, and yeah, once we got here, I was immediately like, I was brought into this business when I was 3.5 years old. Wait, let me backtrack.
Yeah, yeah.
For 1 second.
Okay.
So my dad's good friend, a producer, his name's Kevin Messick. He's also my godfather. He put me in a movie when I was 1 year old. So I was on a movie set when I was one. I was the baby in this movie called The Babysitter with Alicia Silverstone, which I'm sure you know who she is, right?
Yeah.
She was my first kiss, which was awesome.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I have a picture of that, which is great. But I've been on sets from a very, very young age. So we came back and my dad started managing people and talent. So I would be on sets with him a lot. And then that didn't work out for him. And then he started producing, right? So, 4, 5, 6 years old, I'm going to school and then I'm going to set to meet my dad. And, I'm sitting in his office all day and I'm picking up on all these things. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I'm in this business from such a young age. So I was definitely exposed to it very young. My dad, like you, he had that sort of complex of like, I do not want to lose. I'm just going to work hard. I'm going to be good to people. And that's how you become successful. In this business, I think that's how you become successful. You just put your head down, you work hard, you're nice to people. Karma always wins at the end of the day, right? So he went to school with Michael Bay at Wesleyan, and they knew each other when they were kids. And Michael was a very successful director, young director at the time. Armageddon, like just huge hits.
Yeah.
And my dad and him got into contact again, and he asked my dad if they wanted to partner on a production company. My dad was like, "Oh my God, like could be the biggest opportunity in my life, and I can't blow this because, this is my chance." And they started a production company, and I guess, long story short, they were partners for 17 years.
Wow.
And they've had tremendous success. They split off last year, but it was truly one of those moments you have in your career where it's like, wow, like I can really take this, and this is my chance. This is my
Right.
chance. And at the time he was, I think 31. So he'd been working really, really hard,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was sort of my exposure into the industry. And then once that started happening and his career started blossoming a lot more, I was at movie premieres every year, and I'm on sets. I'm on sets with people that like you see today, and you're like, oh my God, these are some of the biggest superstars in the world. And it's crazy because I grew up as a kid, like not seeing those people that way. I grew up with Ryan Reynolds, right? And like, he was just like a big brother to me. And it's just a weird sort of experience that I had where, I was so inside on this world that I didn't even see it from like an outside perspective. I saw it as these people in my life.
That's insane to grow up in hearing, probably, I mean, just the language of things. Because that's something that when I moved here, as I got on sets, there was so much lingo that was so foreign to me. So many, just even phrasings of in the movie industry that I did not know at all whatsoever. So it must have been, I mean, it's like you got to learn this language that a lot of people don't get to have the luxury of hearing and learning from such a young age. So that's amazing that you were able to have that. I think that's awesome.
I think you don't realize the ultimate experience in this business is just being on set and having experience.
Yeah.
Like once you get to that place and you're able to understand how a set is run and what everyone's job is, and how it runs, just like it's a well-oiled machine. So if you can understand the parts, it's like you can understand what's going on in the business. You'll succeed, right? Because you get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. I was just on these sets when I was a kid, and my dad, he worked with a lot of stars who were not stars back then at all, right? Or they were. That's not to say they weren't stars, but they weren't at the peak of their career. They were very young at that point. They were our age or younger. Hart. I mean, and you see them now, and they're superstars, and it's crazy to watch people grow.
Yeah, and you probably also saw a lot of the bad sides of the industry, which is also, I mean, being so close. I know you're so close with your dad, so I'm sure that there was a lot of knowledge and lessons being taught in what not to do in this industry, which is so cool. It's also such a great thing to have gotten to have growing up.
Yeah, and again, it's all about experience, right? So I'm so fortunate that I was able to listen to those calls that he would make every day after school, and that I would get to see the mistakes that he would make when he was younger. And whether I knew it or not, they are somewhere in my brain. And if an experience like that happens to me, I do have something to pull from, which is great. It's been sort of an interesting road. Like I had a very traditional childhood. Like I went to school. I never wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be an NBA player my whole life, as you know.
Cameron's a great basketball player.
Thanks, buddy. You're not too bad yourself. We'll tell that story later of your finger. So I had this super traditional childhood. It was so weird. He found such a great dynamic, my dad did, of like giving me this normal childhood and also exposing me to this business.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I didn't want to be an actor forever. I hated it in high school. I hated acting. Like it was something that I just did not want to do. I don't know why. I just didn't want to do it. And when college hit, I sort of got the bug, and then things started from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's talk about you, because I mean, it's crazy. I honestly, I don't even want to say anything. I just want you to speak, and I think everyone should just listen, because your story it's so motivational, and it's you just go. I'm just gonna sit back here and just listen because.
All right. Well, I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas. My parents lived in Conway, Arkansas, about 30 minutes away. And there was no 30 minutes in Arkansas is 30 miles. Like, that's just how anywhere, like 30 minutes in LA is down the road. But
Yeah.
there was no hospital there was a hospital, but they weren't able to birth babies in Conway, in the town that my family lived in. So they drove 30 miles to have me in Little Rock. I was born, and then I was in Little Rock for a couple of days, and then my family drove me very slowly back to Conway, and I grew up there. At a very young age, my mother and my father were both very obsessed with, they loved music, and they loved acting, and they loved theater. And my brother's older brother lived in Los Angeles in the 80s and was an actor. And I just sort of grew up around a bunch of people who loved this industry from so far away, from the middle of nowhere. And there was no sheltering for me. My parents took me to all these insane concerts, like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Kiss, Kid Rock, Ted Nugent, like, just name it, Janet Jackson. Like, there's not a lot of people that come through Little Rock, Arkansas. But if they came through, we were there. My parents would take me, and they would take me to Memphis a lot because they loved Memphis, and they loved that whole blues history and culture and environment. So I was in Memphis a lot, and my parents loved Elvis. So, like, there's a picture of me as a baby, my very first Halloween, and I'm a baby Elvis. Like, they just loved Elvis. So I grew up watching a lot of Elvis, a lot of his concerts, and a lot of his movies. I've seen Jailhouse Rock probably a million times. I just was so infatuated with just the industry from afar. And so I have a large family in Arkansas. I have like 30 cousins and a lot of aunts and a lot of uncles. And there's such a family culture in Arkansas that we would all get together and we would put on talent shows from when I was very little, and everybody would do their talent. And so I was always singing and dancing, and my mom and dad both took and put me into a lot of local theater productions and got me just comfortable on stage. I was also in dance classes. I was doing tap and jazz and ballet and hip hop, everything from a very young age. And I was the only guy in these classes. It was me and about 50 girls. And he got made fun of a lot in Arkansas in grade school and in high school for doing that, for being in those classes and being at recitals and being the only guy. And it got me very comfortable on stage, but it was such a big thing for my footwork in sports, whether it was football or soccer or basketball or tennis, whatever. Doing all those classes at a very young age, especially all the dance, got me very comfortable in my own body. So it was the best thing that my family could have ever done for me. And I'm very, very thankful that they encouraged me doing that. And they also gave so much support where they were like, don't listen to these people. Don't listen to all these people that are making fun of you. They don't get it, and they're very small-minded. And my parents instilled a very thick skin in me. And they also instilled a element in me that just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I didn't listen to what other people thought or what they wanted. So as I got older, I continued to do theater in my local, community theaters and the colleges. I live in a town where there are several small colleges, and I would do their musicals and their plays. And Shakespeare. Like I got a lot of training in the middle of nowhere, and I was able to. It was a relatively small town, so I was able to take big swings and figure things out. And all the people around me really encouraged that. I was always the youngest one because it was mostly college students. So they really encouraged me getting out of my shell, which was great for me and got me very comfortable. So then when I graduated high school, I went to a music school in Nashville, Tennessee called Belmont University. My grandmother had gone there in the 40s, 50s when it was an all girls school. And that's how I found out about it. So I took a trip to Nashville with my family and absolutely loved it. I had been in like a local, like sort of garage type band in Arkansas from, the age of 12 till the time I graduated. So music was a big part of what I wanted to do. So I went to Belmont. It was very expensive. And I knew after a year, like I wasn't going to be able to keep going here. Like it was a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have any money. So I took a trip to Nashville. I became very good friends with someone there, and a bunch of us took a trip to Los Angeles. And I went there on like a spring break of my freshman year of college and decided I wasn't going to go back to college. I was going to stay in Los Angeles. And I just was obsessed. I was obsessed with, number one, when I landed, the weather. It was probably the perfect day of weather in Los Angeles' history. And there's also this like glimmer to when you get to this place that is so different from where you grew up, and so vast and so big, and so there's so much energy, and it's fast, and I loved it. And from day one, I mean, I was here for about a week. And I made that decision. I went back to Nashville, finished up my freshman year, went home to Arkansas, took about 6 months where I was working in a flower shop. I was delivering flowers, saving up money to move to Los Angeles. And I knew one person in LA. It was somebody that I had grown up, was a dear childhood friend of mine. And they had they had been a part of, they were on America's Next Top Model. And so that's how they ended up in Los Angeles. They were sort of discovered out of nowhere in Arkansas. And so that was my one connection. And I told her I was coming into town, and she was like, you can come. I just moved into this apartment. You can come. I don't have any furniture, but you can. I have a cardboard box that the mattress that I just got came in, and you can sleep on that if you want. And I was like, great, love it, I'll take it. So I slept on this cardboard box for the first 2 weeks that I was in Los Angeles. And every single night, she had hardwood floors, so the cardboard box would slide out from under me. So I always woke up just like face smashed on like hardwood floor. So it was interesting, but it was all I had. Eventually she got a couch, and I slept on her couch for about a year, and was paying her, I believe it was $300 or it was $500 a month. And I was sleeping on her couch, and all my stuff that I had. I mean, I basically came out here with just a backpack and a little small carry-on of clothes. And I quickly realized I needed to get some new clothes, because the clothing in Arkansas is very different from the clothing in Los Angeles. And I liked the clothing in Los Angeles, and I wanted to fit in a little bit more in this world. So I went to thrift shops, and the ones I could find, most of them were Goodwills, because they were on the cheaper end of thrift shops. In Arkansas, you can go to a thrift shop and get clothes for 50 cents. In LA, finding a cheap thrift shop is really tough. And in Arkansas, the Goodwills are the most expensive thrifts. But in Los Angeles, they're the cheapest thrifts. And, a shirt that's $1 in Arkansas at a Goodwill is $7 in LA. So I remember calling my dad and being like, "Oh my gosh, even the Goodwill is like expensive out here. Like I don't even." But it's the cheapest. Like going into the other ones, they were like $50 for a shirt, because it's vintage, and it's just a different thing. It's not like a true thrift like in Arkansas. So I got really nervous about that, but I got a few pieces of clothes. I looked a little bit more like I was ready to go and audition, and or at least take meetings. So I figured out the bus routes. Actually, no, let me back up. I didn't figure out the bus routes. All I had was my phone, and I looked up a bunch of modeling agencies, and I knew that if I could go and like sign with one of them, then it would solidify me staying out here, and then I could maybe start going in for some commercials or in for some like ad work or whatever. Because I had done some modeling in Arkansas for Dillard's, because that's where their corporate office is. So I had these pair of boots that I still have. I can't wear them anymore because I've literally walked through them. Like there are giant holes in these from my toes, because I would walk 4 or 5 or 6 miles to these different agencies. And I was so just infatuated with being out here that I would just walk around in amusement of everything around me. So I enjoyed it. I had no problem with it, but I didn't know anything about Uber. I didn't know anything about, because we didn't have that in Arkansas. I didn't know anything about ordering a car, but I started to notice some of the buses, and I couldn't afford the buses. So I continued to walk for quite a while. Then I figured out I could, if I went to the machines and I put in that I was, I found out a way to rig the bus routes where I could get like a card pass for like 50 cents. And then I could go anywhere I wanted for the whole day. So instead of having to pay $2.50, I only had to pay 50 cents, which at the time was about all I had. So I got these cards that allowed me to take the buses around. And that helped. It was a lot better than walking. But then I was entering into a whole new beast of, every once in a while, someone crazy getting on the bus and like screaming at someone, or urinating on someone. Like there was all sorts of, that was a whole new world. And there's no bus really that takes you exactly where you want to go. It's very rare that I would only have to take one bus. I would usually have to connect 2 or 3 buses, and it could end up taking me hours, because if I would take this one up La Brea to Hollywood and Highland, then the one on Highland might not come for another 45 minutes. So then I have to sit there. Even if I missed it by just a minute, I would have to sit there for 45 minutes and then take that one. So it was taking a long time, but eventually I signed with a modeling agency, and they also had an acting like agency attached to it. So I started working with the acting one and started going in on auditions, and he started sending me on things that I really enjoyed doing. I auditioned for quite a while, and eventually booked something and was able to not have to. Well, I feel like I jumped over a section. I need to jump back. I need to jump to around when you and I became friends.
Let's go there, because I was going to chime in.
Let's cut that. Let's go back, because I want to go into that.
Well, yeah, because I remember when you and I first met, I didn't really know you were an actor at that point. I didn't even know you were going on auditions. Like, you were very invested in what you were doing whenever I saw you. So whether it was making music, it was like you were making music, and until you're done making that song or that beat or whatever you were focusing on at the time, there's no reaching Hart. It's like Hart needs to finish what he's doing because he's determined to do that. And then you can get the great Hart that you are. But like, you have to achieve what you want to achieve. And I remember, I guess I'll go into like, we first met at a music festival through some mutual friends. And from the get-go, I was like, this guy's so, you were talking about your fashion, I was like, this guy's so fucking cool. Like the way that you looked, and your hair, and you're rocking the bandana and the whole thing. And I'm like, I like this guy. This guy's a really nice guy. Not a lot of guys that look like that and dress like that are super nice guys. So, you're different. You and I, like, our friendship grew, and during our friendship, at the beginning, I know you were working many different side jobs that I didn't really even know about at the time. Like, I knew little bits and pieces there, but we'd always have moments of like, things are tough. And I remember being like, every moment I'm like, you are so talented. Like, this is going to work. Just keep doing what you're going to do. And, I'm here for you, and all your friends are here for you, and we're going to get through it. And, obviously I know you worked Postmates, and I'll let you go into that.
Yeah,
But
that's where I want to pick up from is I get a manager and I start auditioning. I'm going out and I'm doing auditions, but auditioning is tough. I mean, and out here you're going up against a lot of people. You're going up against thousands of people, and so and you don't get paid to audition. So you're doing all this work, but you're for free essentially. You're doing it in from a hopeful place of I want to book this and I would love to book this, but you're not making any money while you do that. So yeah, I took on multiple jobs. I started working for Postmates. I was delivering food. I would mostly do that at night. And that saved me a lot of times because I had no money at all. And I mean, all the money that I had would go to rent, or um, I started dating somebody who had a car. And so they would drive me to auditions. And that was a huge help for me. That was incredible. And then eventually I got a car. So all my money was going to my car payment and rent and food. But there were some times where I didn't have like enough money for food. Truly, I only had a few dollars, and I was right on the. I mean, I was just keeping up with being able to stay in my apartment and have a car. And I had made a big mistake where I booked a big modeling job. I went and shot for Adidas in New Orleans, and I think I made like $5,000 or $6,000 on that job, which at the time was more money than I had ever seen in my life. And I made the mistake of thinking, oh well, I'll book one of these a week. I'll book one of these like every 2 weeks, like because I booked that very soon after signing with a modeling agency, and it tricked me into thinking that would be the normal thing. So I
good
went and
lesson.
bought a
It's a good lesson to learn.
a really good one. And the best part of it is I went and bought a car that was it was a car I certainly couldn't afford, and that, like I said, I was just keeping up with being able to make my rent and the car payment. I was also working at Brandy Melville in the mornings, and they were very flexible with my time. My girlfriend at the time also worked there, so that was a fun job, and I enjoyed that. But I was doing that, and I would go to thrift shops and I would buy things for really cheap that I knew I could sell for more on eBay. So I would go home and I would list them for 20, $30 more or whatever it was. And so I had those three jobs circulating on top of going to other auditions and going to castings for either commercials or print work, whatever it was during the day. But I bought that car off of that job that I had, and it got to a place where my girlfriend and I at the time went to this party where they were handing out McDonald's coupons, and for like a free burger or a free shake or a free breakfast sandwich, whatever it was, you could only use one of them per McDonald's. So her and I would get in the car. We got the person who was throwing the party gave a stack of them to us when we left. And so we were going around the McDonald's using them like one. Okay, I'll get this at this one. Okay, you get this at that one. Okay, you get that with that one. And we would drive to three. And by the time we would have enough for us to like split a hamburger or split a shake or split it, whatever it was. And I that the car payment and the rent got above the money I was pulling in, and they took my car away. And it was really sad to see that car be taken away. And this was before I booked really any acting thing at all. I saw the car go away. And the most devastating part of it was that stack of McDonald's coupons were in the car, were like in the cup holder. And after they drove off, I realized it, and I tried to call, and try to get a hold of someone, and I never saw him again. And I was so devastated to tell my girlfriend, like, I left the cards in the car that was just repossessed, was taken away from me. And it floored me to see how upset, like, and concerned and worried it made her and I both. Like, it was such really a devastating thing. And you at this time didn't know any of this stuff. And I was still hanging around with you and doing everything normal and acting like everything was a-okay. And um, I remember really hoping that I never had to say why my Jeep wasn't here anymore, or um, yeah. And so I couldn't, also my girlfriend and I couldn't live at the place that we were living at anymore. So we started sleeping in her little Prius that she had, and we would just like lean the seats back and like sleep basically sitting up with all of our possessions in the back of the Prius, which was also a very difficult and trying time. We after that started sleeping on a couch at this place called Winston House, which is like a compound of sorts for different artists coming through towns. And our friend Corey opened up his home to us to sleep on the couch there. So we slept on the couch there for a while, and it was right on Venice, and that was a very life-changing time, because I knew that this couldn't go on further. Like I was at a make or break point. I'd been out here for about 2 years, or maybe coming on 3, and nothing it really hadn't hit yet. And so I really buckled down and started working harder on auditioning than I had ever before. I would get an audition and I would read the script, 2 times, or I would read the lines over and over and over and over. And I just got to a place where I was obsessing with it. And then I got the Riverdale audition.
Hold on. Can we stop for 1 second?
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think about at what point this was in our friendship, but I remember I was doing this campaign for Penguin, the clothing company. And I was working with them a lot, and they wanted to do a holiday campaign with me, and they were like, get a group of your friends together and let's do it. And I remember, because I asked Hart to do it, and he said yes. And obviously, you got paid. I don't think it was a ton of money. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't anything crazy.
It was great for me. Like at the time, it was, yeah.
But I didn't, like, at that point, I had no idea what you were really dealing with. So I was like, oh, it's nice of Hart to do this for this low amount of money, right? Because like in terms of the modeling world, it wasn't, for any of us, it wasn't a ton of money. It was just a good opportunity for exposure.
Right.
And I remember you posted an Instagram photo of our campaign being like, you were eating the food at on the table. It was it was a holiday campaign.
I think it was a thing. It was for Thanksgiving, wasn't it? So we had like a full Thanksgiving platter out, and I was starving at that time. I was very skinny and thin, and my head was shaved, and I was very hungry and ate a lot of the food. And they kept being like, "Hold on, like we don't eat all of it yet. Like we have to have this for the shot."
So good, but I just remember that, and we look back on that, and it's sort of a testament to how you've grown, and you've actually grown physically. I mean, you're what, 20 pounds of muscle 20, more now.
25, 25 more than I was then. Yeah.
So, so, going back to, you booked Riverdale. Like I remember right before when that was happening, like you were saying, you got really obsessive with your auditions and you got so locked in. And I remember like you would just go off the grid again, like worse than before, like to a point where it was like, I'd probably call you like 20 times in 1 week, and I'd be like, "Is he okay?" I'd be texting your girlfriend at the time to get in contact with you to make sure you were good. Like we had no idea where you were, but in that time you were working your ass off, right? So
and I got to a place where I was like, "Look, I can't. I love hanging out with my friends and being with my friends, but I just can't right now. Like I can't do this. I've got to trade it off. I've got to buckle down and work on this stuff so that then I can hang out with my friends, not from a stressful place of like, oh my gosh, I have $4 in my account. If we go somewhere to eat, I'm just not going to have to eat. And it just would stress me. I would be concerned. I would be worried. But living at that house it was right off of Venice, like Boulevard. It was right off of Abbot Kinney. It was such a great environment. We would walk over to the coffee shop. We'd spend a lot of times at Tom's over there, and we would just sit down and we would read and we would write. And it became an obsession. And I was ready to get out of that place, to get out of that hole. And right around that time, like I said in the Mads podcast that we did, I I couldn't afford to pay my phone bill, and went to the Riverdale audition, did the audition, got a call back for it, went to the callback or producer session, and I didn't. I had read the lines so much from my phone that I knew them like the back of my hand. But I always like to take paper sides in, and I didn't have a printer, so I went to like the FedEx print and ship office, and you could usually print out your sides for about $1.50, somewhere in there, and $1.50. But I remember this day particular, the sides came out to $1.13, and my card declined. I couldn't pay for it to print. I didn't even have $1.13, and I was shocked. My girlfriend at that time had surgery that morning. It was a very hectic morning, and so I was like, oh, whatever, I'll just go to the audition, and I'll just not have any sides. I'm not going to look at my phone. So I just went in and I just sat in the waiting room, and there were several other guys who looked similar to me, sitting in there reading their lines and over and saying them out loud. And I just had this like calm, collected mentality of like, look, I don't have any sides. Like there's nothing I can reread. I mean, I could read my phone, but I just was like, I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to take this in for what it is. And I went in and did the audition. And 2 days later or 3 days later,
hold on. Let's pause for a minute, because I think I saw you 2 days after that. We were hanging out.
Yeah, we were playing.
We were playing spike ball.
Yeah.
In my friend's backyard,
yep.
And you had your burner phone on you, and you kept checking it. You kept checking it, and I was like, "Dude, what's going on? Like, just tell me what's going on." And you're like, I auditioned for the show. Like, I really want to get it. And I was like, "Oh, tell me what show." And you were just like, "I can't tell you."
Yeah.
I was like, Hart, come on, dude. You're one of my best friends. Just tell me what it is. You're like, if I tell you, I won't get it, and I don't want to jinx it. So
yeah, I'm very. I think about things like that a lot. Like I'm very. I don't think I'm superstitious. I mean, I know that lines up with that way of thinking, but there are things sometimes when I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to say anything about it. I don't even want it to be. I mean, it's like how I didn't tell you I was going through all those things. It was just like that. So I was like, I can't say anything.
Yeah. So, but I remember I think you were with me when you got a call, and I think your manager Brandon called you, and he was like, "You're in the final two."
He would say, "You're there. They have option. You're in like the final 2 or 3. Don't go anywhere," because he knew I was supposed to go to Arkansas to see my family, and my mom had already bought my ticket. And it was something that had been planned for a long time. And I really wanted to see my family. So I was like, I'm all right. I told him, I was like, okay, I won't go anywhere. And then I left the next day.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Went to Arkansas.
And then you flew back 24 hours later.
Yep. I went to my brother's football game. And the next day, or that day, they told me, he called me and said that I got it. And that I fly out of LAX on like Friday or something, or Saturday. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it was the happiest moment of my life, because I knew that I had broken through to this thing that I had wanted to do for so long, and that I knew that I wasn't going to have to eat like crumbs anymore or not eat at all. That's also something that I want to touch on. When I did Postmates, there were nights that if the person doesn't come to the door after 10 minutes of you being there, Postmates lets you keep the food, and you get to go on and you get to go do more jobs. And there were many times when the people, I would be calling them, standing outside their apartment building, and for whatever reason, if they fell asleep or something happened and they couldn't come, then I got to keep the food. And there were sometimes like it opened up. I'd never had sushi really. I had never had really good like the food, like Brazilian food. I remember that happened a lot because I lived near Bossa Nova. So I would get to eat this amazing food. And it also opened my horizons to different types of food. So not only did it keep me, it kept me alive. It also it made me just discover more. And I loved it for that. And it was great to have that. But yeah, I flew back to LA quickly, flew to Vancouver, and thank God some of my first scenes were dinner scenes. That a lot of my first the if you go back and watch, a lot of my stuff is at a dinner table. And when you're shooting a dinner scene, you have to shoot it for about 5 hours. You shoot a lot of takes of it. There's a lot of turnarounds, and you shoot a lot of different angles. And you get to eat in the scene, and then they take that plate, and then they do it the way that it was in the other shot. They set it up again, and they have this thing called a spit bucket, where they bring a bucket over, and while you're chewing in this scene, you spit it out, like, so that you're not eating a ton of food, that you're not having to consume thousands and thousands of calories. But I was like, it was a breakfast scene, and breakfast is my favorite. I was like, get that spit bucket out of my face. I'm about to eat all of this, because I was so hungry. And I was amazed that there was a crafty table where I could eat as much as I wanted. And then in this dinner scene, I could have as much as I wanted. And it was pancakes and bacon and eggs and biscuits. And I was just like, oh, this is heaven. Like, this is the best job in the world. Like, I was so happy. And I quickly put on some weight that I was much needed, because I was starving. I was like 135 pounds, and I'm 6 feet tall. So I was skinny.
Just shows, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just shows that hard work pays off.
Yeah,
honestly.
and sticking to it, and keeping things in your mental, and really working really hard.
Yeah. It's crazy. It just is. It's crazy, and it's just so inspirational for anybody listening, that it doesn't matter how low you are on your luck. If you just work hard and you push through, good things will happen.
Yeah. And surrounding yourself with people like yourself, and you've always been there for me. I've always been there for you, and we've always been 100% honest with one another,
always,
and genuine, and I think that's really important. And having someone that you can really confide in. I've told you things that either no one knows or not many people know, and vice versa. And that's a very important thing to have. And people that just support you. Me not ever telling you things that I was going through had nothing to do with it. It doesn't speak on the nature of our relationship. That speaks on just how I am as a human. I've always felt like I could always tell you anything and everything. And you've always been very supportive, which has been awesome. It's been really helpful to have.
And I know that too. There are just some men that want to just push through at all costs and do it the way that they want to do it, and keep their head down. They don't want other people to take on their problems. They want to deal with their own problems head on, and that's what you did, and I respect the hell out of you for it. So
same. Would you do anything different?
That's a good question. Maybe I would have started acting a little earlier in my life, but I had a very, I don't want to keep dragging on, but I had a very unique experience. And when I went to high school, they let us take an internship our second semester senior year. So I don't know how I got past HR, by the way, but I ended up getting an internship at WME, at William Morris, which for people listening is a very big talent agency. And I was 16, right? So I had no idea what was going on. Everyone in there was much older than I was. And it, at that point, like, I got to see our world from like a young adult, and it just sort of made me understand it and realize, I didn't want to be on the agency side of things. I wanted to be on the talent side of things. And one of those guys that's like, my dad's a successful movie producer, and I'm just going to lay around and be lazy and be one of those guys, or I'm going to be the person that is so driven and wants to, attain that same level of success, or hopefully one day achieve more success. Right. So, yeah, it's been an up and down road. And I think for you too. And for me, there's always ups and downs. This year I was on my way out. I wanted to quit our business. Like a lot of people like you and a lot of my close friends, they're successful in our field. And I always want to be as supportive as I possibly can to my friends and give them all that I can. But it's hard sometimes when you're working hard and you're not seeing the result that you want to see. I'll just tell the story super quick. So I remember it was October, and I had been working on the show The Last Ship. I worked on it for 4 seasons. Not a super big role, and I couldn't book anything for my life. I booked one episode of the show called Bull. Other than that, I could not book anything for probably a year and a half or 2 years, and I was so frustrated that I was like, I had this breaking point where I was like, I can't keep doing this anymore. Like, I just don't know if this is going to work for me. Maybe acting's not my thing, right? And I remember I came home and I was so upset. I started crying. This was this year, or this was last year. I start crying. I call my dad and I'm like, I think I'm done. I got a job on this show called Showtime for HBO as a walkie-talkie PA, which is like a very entry-level job on set, where you basically are in control of all the walkie-talkies on set and all the batteries on set. So you have to just make sure that you don't lose walkies, you don't lose batteries, and you have a full belt on with batteries on. People are like, we need a walkie battery here, here, here. So you're just the messenger for that. And so I go to that job and I start working that job, and I was like, what am I supposed to do in my life, right? Like, I was just at such a crossroads of, am I meant to be here? Am I meant to act? And, I remember the second day, I was not qualified to do this job at that point in my life. Like, I hadn't been on set. Let me backtrack that. I hadn't had experience in that field, so I was playing catch up when I got there. So my dad basically lied to the production, and I lied on my resume saying that I had been a PA on 3 to 5 movie sets before, when I really haven't. So they came in expecting a lot from me and me knowing these things. So I had to pick up a lot really quick. And I remember on the second night, I came home, broke down again. I was like, this is so much to take in. I don't want to let the production down. Don't know what I want to do with my life. And I get an audition in my email from my manager. And I was like crying and emotional. And my roommate was like, let's just go do it. And I was like, okay, let's just go do it. So I go upstairs. It's like 11 at night. I have work the next day at 6 a.m. And I'm like, all right, let's just try this. And I did it, and I sent it in, and they called me like 2 days later, and they're like, you booked it. And I was like, are you kidding me? And they're like, yeah, you booked it. Like, you're the lead. Like, you're the guy. I was like, what? And they're like, yeah. And it was just one of those moments where, even at your lowest, like, something great can happen to you.
Yeah.
And that changed my life. Just like
and
Riverdale
you
changed your life.
Yeah. And you also, in that time, I remember talking to you, asking you what you were doing. You're like, I'm just like working on this set. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what, doing what? And you're like, I'm just like PA stuff, like just doing some stuff. And you were sort of, you didn't want to like really, you were like, you're very ambiguous about it. And I was like, all right, whatever. But then to hear your voice a few days later when you had booked this role and you could go beyond that, lead that, you were thrilled. And it was great to hear your voice in the difference in those.
Yeah.
That's the same thing as just sticking to your guns and working hard. And
exactly.
Not giving up.
Which I think is the point of our podcast,
Yeah.
And just experiencing, other people's stories like both of ours, and everyone comes from completely different circumstances. So it's just so unique hearing these stories and these journeys. And I'm lucky to know you and call you one of my closest friends, someone I consider family. And,
Absolutely.
we come from completely different backgrounds, but when you find your people, you find your people.
And there's a gut feeling to knowing when, somebody's going to be there for you in all of it, through all of it.
Yeah. So I think that's a good lesson, is just surround yourself with good people and work hard. And that's not to say that Hart and I have made it in any way, but, we're fortunate to have just achieved some of our personal goals up to this point. And there's a lot higher goals that we want to achieve and achieve together and individually. So we're looking forward to pushing towards those too.
Yep. Just stick to your guns, work hard. You never know when something could change your life. You never know.
You never know.
And if it's something that you love doing, then stick with it.
100%.
Get used to the no's. There's a lot of no's and there's a lot of trials and errors, and it's hardly ever easy. I don't know if it's easy for anyone. Whether you grew up in the industry or whether you move here, it's going to be tough. Always. And it doesn't, at no point does it ever become easy, no matter the level of your success. There's new challenges at every level. So whether you're just getting started or you're the biggest movie star in the world, it's going to be tough, and you got to have grit. You got to work really hard. And you can't let up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode. I didn't know it would be this emotional. I'm not crying. You're crying.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys listening. Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah. That's what I got.
And I'm excited to get into it with all the people to come. Cameron and I have done some episodes already with some of our friends that will be coming out soon, and there will be a lot more to come. And hopefully by you guys hearing some of the things that overlap in all these episodes, you're able to sort of form your own blueprint for how you want to get to where you want to be. But yeah, and be sure to subscribe to us on the Himalaya app or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll have episodes coming out weekly, and we love you guys. And thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.